The reindeer licking you. You've done something. He said, that's just stupid. Your reindeer are out of control. Sort them out, sort them out, sort them out. So the whole of it, everybody's laughing at me. They sort of took my hand and we sort of rebuilt the tent. They put me back inside. And the little old lady came back to me. Now she really had no teeth, grinning, said, would you like some more? I'm not going to have any more. We're going to have another sip, have another sip. And in the meantime, the children, everybody's sort of holding themselves, laughing, realized that I peed my pants. And I didn't really understand the correlation between the two. What does peeing your pants have to do with the reindeer stampeding the tent in the middle of the night? Well, it turned out, the Tutsi said they have these pouches where they collect urine in. And I hadn't actually noticed it in the last 2 weeks of me sulking. And they said, we collect our urine, and the reindeer love the urine because there's salt in there. And as we're migrating from camp to camp to camp during the day, we spray the snow in the reindeer, and that's how they follow us, all 3,000 of them. They're not on their lead, they follow the urine. We're controlled with how we collect our urine in these little pouches. You're out of control, and you spray it all over the tent. She said, have you been observing us in the last 2 weeks? You know, you've been sitting there sulking, not being able to make your pictures. And I said, yeah, I'm terribly sorry. I was still denying the fact that I peed my pants. And I said, well, it's okay, have another drink. We put up the tent. And in a very, very beautiful way, everybody started to laugh. And they laughed at me. And the next morning I was about to leave and they were laughing. And they said, well, have another drink. It was such good fun. What else for you to do? Because we're really enjoying your company. And I was going, so you actually want me to stay? Well, as long as you're fun and you keep in your pants, you're more than welcome to stay. And what happened was actually very beautiful. I lost all sense of ego. I lost all sense of purpose. I lost all sense of the only reason I was there prior to this was to take that picture. And in a very beautiful way, I started to be included. I started to be included as the joker, as the little man who sort of pees his pants on that because he can't hold his alcohol. But in a very, very beautiful way, we became friends. And in that process, I began to explain who I was, find a way to humbly communicate what I was looking for, the connections that I was trying to make, and eventually take out a camera, a very old, simple plate camera, find the piece, find the focus, look at these magnificent people, listen to their stories, understand how they live, why they live, and why they choose to be in these extraordinary environments, and eventually make a picture. But it only came by losing all sense of dignity, losing all sense of ego, losing all sense of purpose, and letting go. The invariable way of arriving in environments like this with helicopters and jeeps and long legs and ego and machismo, and ending up being nothing. Just nothing, sitting on the floor, crying with my wet knickers. And in a very, very beautiful way, it taught me a very, very profound lesson of letting go and finding a very deep inner truth. Why? What am I looking for? What am I searching for? What do I need? And I think it has very, very, very little to do with photography, which is somewhat of a contradiction to be standing here today. What you see next door in the magnificent hall are all pictures. But they're the end result of a very, very long, serious, reflective journey. And I want to take you on that. And it has nothing to do with alcohol. It has nothing to do with peeing my knickers in a tent. It has to do with this. It has to do with your personal journey. What you experience and what you're looking for. And I'm going to share something very personal with you. It's somewhat dramatic. It has a very beautiful ending. That's what's hanging here next door. But it needs to be shared for you to better understand what I'm trying to achieve. I haven't achieved it yet, but I'm well on the way to getting closer to that goal. And it started here when I was 7. Or maybe even before when I was 7. As a very young child, my father was a geologist. He was very autistic. He spoke about 15 languages, but he couldn't speak to people. Why he learned those languages, I wasn't sure. His way of communicating was with stones under the ground. And for the first 7 years of my life, he took me with him. And I traveled around the world, and I often use the overly romantic analogy. Forgive me for using it. It is an overly romantic analogy, as you'll begin to discover in the next hour. I tend to lean on the romantic. It was Mowgli. And I had this idea, I was free. I was naked, I sort of roamed the planet as this sort of very free, liberated child. Most of the time I didn't wear clothes because it was hot in the environments that I lived in, and I felt very trusted, I felt very loved, and I felt very understood. And I lived in some wonderful developing countries in the world with my eccentric, autistic geologist father. At the age of 7, which is here, they said, well, we're going to have to teach you, or somebody's going to have to teach you how to fit into the modern world. That means reading and writing to begin with. So they took me out of that very safe environment and put me on a plane on my own. Literally, I was 7 years old. And they sent me to England to a boarding school. Now, it wasn't just any boarding school, it was this. It looks a bit like Hogwarts, but there was nothing magical about it at all. And it was very isolated in northern England. It had 1,000 children in it, ranging from the ages of 6 till 18. Most of us wore shorts, and it was managed by 400 Catholic Jesuit priests. I can hear a few of you going, ooh. Yeah, believe me, it was ooh. Those priests managed this prison. Naively, in the 70s and in the 60s, and as we now know in a lot of press, these priests literally got away with psychological murder. In a group of 400 men, you're going to have some of those men who kind of lost the plot. They've been living behind these closed walls ever since they can remember, in a supposed form of celibacy, and they're surrounded by lots of little children. I was one of those little children. I arrived strangely with pictures, pictures of where I'd come from. It said, this is me living in West Africa. And I remember it began with judgment very early. You're 7, you're open, you're ready to meet the world, to meet these new people who are going to teach you and guide you into adulthood. And they immediately say, well, why are you not wearing clothes? And I said, well, I don't need clothes where I come from. Well, you must be poor. Poor? What's poor? And they said, who are the black kids in the picture? Well, they're my friends. What's black? I had no idea what black or white was. They were just children, my contemporaries. Then they said, and they used the word, I remember it very vaguely, my mother was here last night, and I sort of confronted her in the middle of the night, and I said, you know, the way they described me when I arrived at the school, they said I was retarded. Do you understand the term retarded in English? It's a very, very derogatory way to put somebody down, as if you're sort of mentally not adequate. I said, well, why would I be retarded? Well, you can't read or write. Okay, so I'm poor, I hang out with the wrong-coloured children, and I'm regarded as retarded. So immediately I'm labelled. Then the priests, as I was sort of touching on a few minutes ago, started to sexually abuse a large percentage of us. I'm not going to go into details about the actual act of what they do, but the psychological fear of them coming to get you kills you. It absolutely kills you, because you never know whether they're going to come and choose you and pick you. You live in these little rooms high up in the attic of these buildings, and late at night, in a random way, they take you out and they do things with you. You can survive. You really survive if you disconnect your emotions. You disconnect from any sense of feeling. Any sense of feeling. And as a result, as a child, I hated being a man. I hated anything to do with masculinity. I mean, I'm going to be graphic, I hated my penis because of what it stood for. I hated myself. But I was okay, and I tried to communicate with people what had happened. In the true English fashion, they sort of closed the curtains, looked at the weather, and had a cup of tea, and said everything will be okay. It wasn't fucking okay, believe you me. Anyway, you sort of grow, you find a form, you develop a very, very, very thick skin, and you feel nothing. You feel nothing. But the problem is, if you're like me, and you're very sensitive, you feel very creative. I was also a very androgynous child. I wasn't quite sure of my sexuality. And I couldn't live without feeling. It was killing me. It was really killing me. And I got to the age of, the way I'm about to cry, but I got to the age of 16, and I can remember very clearly, I can't live like this. I cannot live without feeling. And I came back from West Africa, and I had cerebral malaria, and I was ill, and I was sweating, and I remember feeling super vulnerable. And I went to my parents and I said, you know, now it's time to keep me looking. I'm ill, I've got a temperature of 41 degrees centigrade. And they said, no, we're going to send you to where you belong. Those priests are going to look after you. And I can remember looking, and my mother said, are you serious? You have no idea what's happening there. And I arrived, and I went back, and I was sweating like a dog, feeling extremely vulnerable. And the priest said, well, we'll look after you, take these pills. And they gave me a pile of pills. This is the way I looked. I think this was a few months afterwards, as I sort of stuffed myself full of sugar and cream cakes, so I wasn't overly happy. And I woke up in the morning, I looked in the mirror, and I had no hair, and it had fallen out within 10 hours. Here I am at the age of 51, it's actually heaven on earth having no hair, believe you me, especially traveling. But when you're 16, it's a disaster. I mean, my kids have left their puberty now, and I went through their puberty with them. You know, one spot and the world was about to cave in, you know. I'd been abused and had no hair. And I remember looking in the mirror, thinking, oh my goodness me, I look like an alien. I've lost all form of authenticity of my face. It's gone. And I walked into my peers the next morning, we were having breakfast. Everything went silent. 400 priests, 1,000 children just went silent, and there was this hush. And everybody looked at me, and I thought, why are they looking at me? I'm Jimmy. And I remember shouting, it's Jimmy, it's Jimmy. And I could hear this moment, oh no, it's not, it's somebody else. So you lose yourself. I'd already physically lost myself and mentally lost myself, and all of a sudden I lost myself aesthetically. And you go into this very dark space, and I thought, I've got to solve this. I've got to find a way out of this hole. Nobody's going to help me, no priest, no friend, no parent. So as a child, I'd used Tintin as a sort of metaphoric avatar. I remember I had a pile of Tintins. Does everybody know Tintin? Yeah. And I used him and his journeys and his adventures and his Snowy, his dog, and as an escape. And I remember when I came back from my journeys, the most valuable thing I had was a torch and the batteries, and I'd panic if I didn't have batteries, because that was the light which kept me alive at night under the pillows, hoping the priest wouldn't come and get us. And I went on a journey with Tintin. I knew every one of his journeys, still today. And there was one journey he went on where he went and met little boys with no hair. And that was Tibet. It's very simple. So I finished my high school at 17. I didn't tell anybody. And I bought a one-way ticket. I'd been working on a building site mixing cement. And I disappeared in 1985, 86 to Tibet. Does everybody know a little bit about the sort of contemporary history of Tibet? I mean, when I got there, it had been technically closed for more than 30 years. The Chinese had sort of essentially put a sort of a border around it. I think the last real explorer, not that I was an explorer, had been there, was Heinrich Harren, the German, and after the Second World War. And by default, by being 17, by being bald, by being... I didn't care about anything. I managed to sort of crawl in underneath the Chinese and disappear into Tibet. I lived there for the better part of 2 years. This is the first picture that I published when I came back. You can see the date of 1988. And this was the first lady I remember falling in love with. I don't think she fell in love with me. And I took a little camera with me, a Zenit B. It's a Russian camera. I still have it today. It had 4 shutter speeds and 4 apertures. It's very basic, one lens, a 35mm, in a little leather case. And I took 4 rolls of Kodacolored gold with me, little 35mm roll film. And I didn't take any selfies on the journey. I didn't really take any pictures of the Potala Palace or the mountains or Little and the Chinese. I just took portraits. Everybody who was kind to me, everybody who was nice to me, everybody who held me, everybody who indirectly said they loved me, they were not going to judge me, they were not going to hurt me. They held me, they fed me, they saved me. I'm being a little bit romantic and melodramatic for the sake of the talk, but that's how it felt. And I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to see them, and I said, wait, I want to remember you, but I want to remember you in a beautiful way. I want to remember you in a proud way. I want to remember you in a dignified way, because you have no idea what you've done for me. And that's sort of how it began here, when I was 19. And I sort of came back, and the pictures were published, and somebody said, well, you can become a photographer. I thought, fantastic, I don't have to go to school or study or be part of any group ever again. I can be me, and I can use a camera as an excuse to disappear. But it has nothing to do with the camera. It has to do with being able to disappear and connect with other people. And I remember very early on somebody coming up to me and said, have you ever met Edward Sheriff Curtis? Does everybody know who Edward Sheriff Curtis is? No. Okay, well, I'll introduce you to him. He's very important. We all need heroes. We all need idols. And he's mine. Very early on in my life, this man said, Edward Sheriff Curtis, 100 years ago, lived with the Native American Indians. And I said, well, what did he actually do? They said he spent 30 years of his life traveling around the American West, documenting aesthetically, proudly, romantically, artistically, the Native American Indian. And he made 30 books. I said, wow, that's incredible. They said, yeah, but something very sad happened to him. When he died a pauper. He was bankrupt. More than 95% of his images were destroyed. They were completely annihilated. He was annihilated because they said, you're a waste of time, Edward Curtis. What you did isn't valid. The people you photographed are very primitive, they're very backward, they're very basic. They dance around fires, they ride on horses, they wear feathers in their hair. All those 30 years of your existence is null and void. It's not actually valid. But in the early 70s, a few negatives were found in a basement in New York in a bookshop, and a few books were published, and his images began to light. And he subsequently not only became my hero, but he became a hero for the Native American Indian, and I think he's become a hero for many more people. And I remember his images, thinking, wow, wouldn't it be fantastic to go back a stage, to share that feeling, that power, to celebrate the world's native indigenous cultures, much in the same way Edward Sheriff Curtis celebrated the native Indian Americans, but now doing it on a global scale, because what he felt and what he saw was this power. He felt this dignity, he felt this aesthetic, he felt this culture, and he believed then, he was well ahead of his time, how important it was. And if you look at contemporary American culture today, and look at what's become of it, in my opinion, I don't want to be too political, but it's dreadful what's happening there. There are 3 times more guns than people. I met a Texan the other day in Papua New Guinea, this lady, who said, oh, you're Jimmy, you make the pictures of the tribes. And then he said, you must be afraid of all these primitive peoples. And I said, what are you doing here? And she said, well, to see how dangerous it is, because in America I'm safe because I'm not allowed to carry a gun. And I said, oh, and that's what's gone wrong with the world. You have no idea, sweetie, how amazing it is here. I've just spent 3 days dancing on a festival with 150 tribes, and nothing's happened to me. I wouldn't dare do that in the country that you've come from. So, amongst other things. So that's sort of how it happened. So I started a journey, and I started to travel around the world intensely, trying to make these connections, trying to see these wonderful and these magnificent people and put them on a pedestal. And about 5 years ago, somebody came and said, Jimmy, you've got to publish a book. And I said, you know, wouldn't that be exciting? I remember going to every single publisher. This is a lesson for many of you, I hope, without being too evangelical. And every publisher went, nah, I don't know, Jimmy who? And I said, well, I'm Jimmy Nelson. And sort of Googled Jimmy Nelson. It was true, there was a ventriloquist and a Canadian baseball player with a bad knee. I said, but you don't exist online. I said, yeah, but what do you mean I don't? I'm Jimmy. And they said, but Jimmy who? Well, I make pictures. Yeah, but I've been doing it for more than 30 years. Yeah, but you're nobody. I said, well, do I have to be somebody? Here's the proof. Yeah, but until you're somebody, you can't publish the pictures because you're nobody. I said, oh dear, so we don't actually want it. Every single publisher said, and primitive tribes? Who wants to buy a book on primitive tribes? So I was very disappointed until one publisher said, and this is in essence what he said, I really like you, and I remember him tapping me on the head. He was very arrogant. He says, oh Jimmy, you've tried so hard. We're going to publish a few, and let's see what happens. But at least your mum and your grandmother will be happy. That was about 5 years ago. I don't know exactly how many books have been sold, but it's in the hundreds of thousands in the last 5 years. So something's in it. It meant something, and it started a discussion. And the first discussion was, at the beginning, yeah, Jimmy who? And I said, well, I'm Jimmy Nelson. I've taken these pictures. Okay, well, let's try and investigate what you're trying to do. What are you trying to do? Well, I just love these people, and I want to share them with you. Well, we don't really think that. Are you an anthropologist? No. An ethnologist? No. Well, you're obviously not a photographer because we can't find you online. Well, okay. Did you study photography? No. Oh, well, you're really not a photographer. Yeah. Look at the pictures. Don't they speak for themselves? They say, well, we'll start looking at them, and then a few magazines started to publish them, and then people started to say, well, are these pictures real? And I said, what do you mean, are they real? Well, they're very real. People can't be that beautiful. These people don't exist anymore. They disappeared many, many, many years ago. They're fake. You've dressed them, you've paid them. It's photoshopped. It's all a dream. It's an avatar. It's real fake. It's not fake in the slightest. And then something very interesting happened. It was a sort of an online trolling campaign for